You'll be doing 3.5 as a flipped classroom lesson and have our quiz, but we'll also do a little review using the mini lecture. So here's a case where we're going to actually be doing the thing we introduced a little earlier, that is graphing using the slope-intercept, y equals mx plus b. And if you recall, we said we start off by plotting the y-intercept, the b term. So as we look at this equation, there is no b, or b happens to be 0. Here our b is a positive 3, and here our b is a positive 1. So we'll give you some time to work on it, and then we'll review. So 0, our y-intercept here, this is going through the origin. So mentally, or when we're using MATLAB, we get our line tool, put a dot there, and then we look at our slope. Well, our slope is 2 over 1, where 1 is our run, so mentally we would go over 1, mentally, we don't put a dot there, and then we do our rise, which is 2. So with 2 points, and I can do some more if I wanted, it helps me when I'm doing it on paper here. You get your line tool and just draw your line. And again, this is what MATLAB would be like, and that's what the graph y equals 2x would look like, where the y-intercept is 0, and then your slope is 2 over 1, so go over 1, it's positive, you go to the right, and then up 2. All right, let's take a look at this one here. Here our y-intercept is 3, 1, 2, 3, so a dot there. Again, our slope is 2 over 1, so we would, from our y-intercept, go over 1, up 2, over 1, up 2, just to get some more points. And you'll notice the slant of the line is the same because the slopes are the same. And these lines would be parallel. The slopes are the same. They have different y-intercepts. Now, this is a little hint. When you see a graph, and what's ever in that B position, that's where the line will cross the y-axis. All right, here we have a positive 1. Let's get a proper pen there. And now it's a negative 2 over 1. So instead of going to the right, I'm going to go over 1 this way and then up 2. Over 1 this way, up 2. Get my line tool. Well, I didn't do that one very well, but you get the idea. Okay. Now, these are a shortcut way instead of making your T-chart. So let's go on. I'm going to plot these now using the same technique. So these are in slope-intercept. Now, when it gets to standard form, we have to modify what we're doing a little bit. Let's do this one. Negative 2, right there. Now it's positive slope. I'm going to do the run first. So I go over 2 mentally, and then I go up 1. Over 2 mentally, up 1. Over 2, up 1. So I get a number of points, and I'll be more careful this time. There you go. And there's your graph. Now, for something like this, what they wanted you to do here is to solve for y. So you have 2y equals, you're going to transpose the x, negative 1 over 1x. I'm adding that, plus 6. And you're going to divide everything by 2. So this then becomes y equals a negative 1/2 x plus 3. So I'm going to plot my 3 right there, my y-intercept. Now it's a negative 1/2, so I'm going to go over 2 up 1, over 2 up 1, over 2 up 1. So there's my line here. And it goes this way here too. So again, positive slope starts low and goes up. Negative slope starts high and goes down. Now remember, we had another way to do these when they're in standard form. We could make that x and y intercept t-chart, where if x is 0, this is a 0, we solve for y, that would be 3. There's our y-intercept right there. And if y is 0, x is 6. Just goes to show you we can't do it sketching it too well, because we're not at 6 here. Should be right here, the line. It's probably better. But we weren't looking for that. We just wanted to go over, put our y-intercept dot there, over 2 up 1. Again, graphing when you don't have a ruler and you're very careful about making the points could be off, but MATLAB, when it does it, is very well. Now for something like this, notice that the 3 and the 2 will go into 12 evenly. So I would use the x and y intercept here. Now you could solve for y, but this will work out nicely too. If x is 0, y is going to be a negative 6. If y is 0, x is going to be a 4. So there's our negative 6, and there's our 4, and our line tool, and our graph looks like so. Okay. Now, for something like this, we're going to use the x and y, or I should say the slope-intercept form for writing these equations. They're giving us the slope, and they're giving us the y-intercept. So we just do some substitution. Y equals, slope is a negative 1 that we don't write, x plus 4. Y equals 1/3 x minus 7. And this will be y equals a negative 5/2 x. Now, we don't put plus 0. When it goes through the origin, there's just no b that's written. So again, these should be pretty easy for you. But I find sometimes students fail to put the x there. They'll forget that the x must be there to put it in slope-intercept form. Now, for these, in example 3, we're going to use the point slope form of the linear equation in two variables where we have one point, one ordered pair, and we know the slope. So, as we see here, we have the slope, and there's one ordered pair. So we need to put this into its form. And I'm going to sort of write these out, give you a chance to do it, and then I will go over it with you. So, substituting the 2 for the y here, and a 6 for the x, and 3 for the slope, and then multiplying through, clearing parentheses, and then transposing the negative 2 to this side, we get this. Now, for letter B, I'll do that one with you live here so we can kind of go through the process. I've substituted the negative 5 for the y, and I put that in parentheses because there is a negative in the formula. And notice that the opposite of a negative is going to make this positive. And I've substituted the 1 for my x, so that's negative 1, opposite sign here, because again there's a negative in the formula. And then I've put the slope in as a negative 2/3. Now you could do this, but I'm going to strongly suggest that what you do here is get rid of this fraction. It makes it much easier to work. You're going to multiply each term, and this is all one term here, by 3. So this will be a 3y. This will multiply this by 3. And here, multiplying this by the 3's just cancel out. So we get 3y plus 15 equals now a negative 2x. Negative 2 times a negative 1 is a positive 2. We then transpose our positive 15 to the other side, and we get 3y equals negative 2x. This positive 15 on this side becomes a negative 15. So this becomes a negative 13 now. And now to solve for y, because they want it in slope-intercept form, we divide everything by 3. And we get now y equals a negative 2/3 x minus 13/3. So much easier to deal with when you've taken care of that fraction early on than trying to manipulate with that fraction. Let's go on to example C and fill it in. So it would be y minus, now there's a 7, so I'll put it in parentheses, negative 7, equals our slope, which is 3/2, times x minus, again here this is going to be a minus 2. Now later when you see this minus a negative, you can make this plus right away. I wanted you to see it this way though. So this is going to be a plus, and this will be a plus. And I can get rid of some of those extra things that are there. So this is going to be a plus 2. All right, let me give you a chance to do this, and we'll see what you get. So, again, I would multiply everything by 2, each term. This is a term, all of this is one term. So we get 2y plus 14. Here the 2's cancel out, and we get 3x plus 6. Now we're going to solve for the 2y by transposing the positive 14 to this side as a negative 14, and 6 gives me 3x minus 8. And now we're going to divide everything by 2, and we get y equals 3/2 x minus 4. Again, many students have trouble with this because there's a lot going on in just one example. You have to be familiar with this equation, y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. It's not too hard. If you write it a number of times, that's the practice. Some students have suggested that you take a little index card and write all these formulas down. So this one would be formula 4, and you'd have it on this side, and then you have to, on the back side, see if you can remember it and just drill. This would be a little technique for doing something like that. Now, what I did in my booklet, and I may have shown you this, is that I added some loose leaf paper where I've worked these out, and that's a good technique too. You can undo the rings and slip paper in there. So here, in order to find the formulas of these equations, we have to first find the slope. So this is what I will do for each of these. And I'll have you work on, let's say, these first two. This last one's a little challenging, and I'll do that one with you. So I set these up. It should be relatively easy once you get some practice. 4 minus 0, of course, is 4. 5 minus 3 is 2. So our slope here is going to be 4 divided by 2 is 2. Now here, because of the signs, this will become a plus. So our numerator here is 9. And our denominator a negative 3 when we do this subtraction. And we end up with a negative 3 for this one. And here, even though it looks a little bit weird, it's not too bad. A negative 3/2 and a negative 1/3 give us a negative 3/3, which is a negative 1. And this is going to be the opposite of a negative, makes this a positive. So 5 plus 1 is 6. Divided by 2, that's 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3. So our slope here is a negative 1/3. Now here's a case where you have a choice of which point do we want to use. Well, I would suggest using the easier one, let's say this one. And here, makes no difference, we can use this one. And again, makes no difference, we can use this one. So now we're going to put our slope and this point into our point slope form. And we'll give you some time to work that. So we'll do them in pieces so it doesn't get too confusing. So we have our slope is 2, and we said we're going to use this point. So y minus 0 equals our slope of 2, and then x minus 3. So this just cancels out here. And we get y equals 2x minus 6. But notice they changed our instructions a little bit. They want us to put the final equation in standard form. So how do we do that? Well, we have to take our x term and transpose it back to the other side. So this will become a negative 2x plus y equals a negative 6. Now, in some textbooks, they don't like to have our a term, which is the negative 2, be a negative. So we can make this a positive by multiplying each term by a negative 1, which just reverses all the signs. So MATLAB should accept either one of these, and I know I would. All right, now for this one, we're going to put it in slope-intercept, well, point slope form, I should say. Now our y is a 5. We know our new slope is going to be a negative 3. X minus 5 also. So we clear parentheses, y minus 5. I'm thinking ahead here. Equals a negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15. So I then get y equals, transpose my negative 5 to the other side, where it becomes a positive 5. 5 and 15 is 20. But again, they want this in standard form. So I have to take my x term, transpose that, and since it's negative on this side, it becomes positive on the other side, and we don't have to change any signs anymore. That's the normal way they'd like to see an equation in standard form, when your a term is not negative. Now, as we substitute in letter F here, we have our slope is, I'm going to change colors here too, so we can see this a little better. Our slope is a negative 1/3, so we put that there. Our x value was a negative 1/2. Did I put that right in there? No, I think I changed my mind, I guess. I used this one here. So it doesn't make any difference, but we have to get the right ones. So our x value is 5/2. So there's my 5/2. My y value is a negative 2/3. So negative 2/3 makes this a positive opposite sign. Okay. So now what do we do? Well, I would suggest we get rid of the parentheses here. So we're going to have y. Now there's probably a couple of ways to do this here. Negative 1/3 x, just multiplying this. Now a negative times a negative makes this a positive, and this is going to be 5, 6. There we go. Now that we have gotten rid of the parentheses, we still have fractions. We're going to multiply each fraction, each term, by the lowest common denominator, which is 6. So here we get, and we're running out of room, 6y plus, here this cancels out. We get a 2, so this will be a 4. This cancels out, and we get a 2 there. That's going to be a negative 2x, and this just cancels out nicely. And we get a 5. Okay. Again, we want to put this in standard form. So we're going to transpose the negative 2x to this side, so we get a 2x plus 6y equals, now we're going to transpose the positive 4 to this side, where it becomes a negative 4, and this becomes a 1. And there we have it. Wow. Lots of stuff going on here. I don't think you'll have one like this on your test, but you might get one like this. These aren't too bad. This one was just timely and took a lot of time, tedious. Okay. Now, for these, write an equation of each line. It's vertical. So your equation is going to be x equals a. And what is in the a position here? Remember, this is a comma b. Another way to write the ordered pair. Well, 2. So the answer to this is x equals 2. Kind of a shortcut if you're familiar with these. Horizontal, y equals b. Well, what's in the b position? Y equals -3. Undefined slope. That's a vertical line. X equals a. What's in the a position? X equals 0. Here our slope is 0. What equation is that? Well, y equals b. What's in the b position? Y equals 4. Again, if you are familiar with this is a really useful way to get to some of these things and get some answers that are not as tedious as the ones we had before. Now, in looking through 5a, here they're telling us the different forms of the equations that they want the results in. This is a vertical line, this is a horizontal line, and this is in slope-intercept. So they want you to write an equation in letter A here that goes through this point, which happens to be the y-intercept, because that's 0, b, and is parallel to this line, so it have the same slope. So this one, you didn't have to use formula 4. It's just going to be y equals the same slope and then the y-intercept. Now this one, we don't know the slope because it's written in standard. Now in doing letter B here, I've written this where I've transposed the -2x to the other side, because I need to find out what is my slope. So as I divide everything by a -3, doing this one just a little different way here, this will become a positive y. Here my slope is going to be a positive 2/3. And my y-intercept is a -1/3. But I'm just looking to find what would be the line parallel to this slope. And that would be 2/3. So as I write my new equation, y minus 4 equals my new slope of 2/3 times x minus 1. That's what I'm looking for. So again, I want to get rid of my fractions. I'm going to multiply everything by 3. So here I get now 3y minus 12 equals, here the 3's cancel out, and I get 2x minus 2. Now to solve, and I want to put it in slope-intercept form, I'm going to get 3y equals 2x, transpose this. Now on this side it becomes a positive 12. Minus 2 gives me a positive 10. Now I divide everything by 3. And I get y equals 2/3 x plus 10/3. And that's my answer. Again, they take time. On your test, you're only going to get like one of these, or maybe possibly two. But, you know, it does take time and practice to develop mastery. Now, for letter C, we're asked to find one that's perpendicular to this. So here we have y equals a negative 4x plus 2. So what would be the slope of a line that's perpendicular to that? Well, it would be the opposite sign reciprocal of this. So the new slope would be a positive 1/4. So once we have that, we can write it now. Formula 4, y minus a minus 2 will give you a plus 2 there, equals your new slope 1/4, and x minus 0 will just be that. So, a little bit easier than some of the others. Y equals 1/4 x. Bring this 2 over to the other side as a negative 2, and it's in slope-intercept form. So that one was a little bit easier. And now for our last example of Chapter 5. We want to find what is the slope of this. So 5y, transpose the 2x to the other side, negative 2x, plus 10, divide everything by 5. We get y equals a negative 2/5 x plus 2. So what would be my slope of a line perpendicular? Well, it would be the opposite sign, so it'd be a plus, and then just flip this, 5/2. All right, so not too bad. So we go y minus 4 equals our new slope, 5/2, times x minus a minus 6 makes this a plus 6. And again, so we don't work with fractions. We're going to multiply everything by 2 for now. So these will cancel out, and I get 2y minus 8 equals 5x plus 30. Transpose the negative 8 to the other side, where it becomes a positive 8. So that's going to be 5x plus 11. Now I think I said 30 and I wrote down a 3, so I have to write 30 down. So negative 8 on this side becomes a positive 8. So positive 8 and 30 becomes 38. Okay, so I have this. Now again, if I were putting that in standard form, I would just transpose the 5x. But here they wanted it in slope-intercept. So I have to divide everything by 2. And I get then y equals 5/2 x, which is what we said are reciprocal of this, negative opposite sign reciprocal of our original equation, 5/2 x, and then this becomes 19. Okay, you're going to get your mastery points, practice. You might want to try, and I strongly recommend you try the self-assessment test, and then we'll have our test in next lab.